Hello and welcome to Lunch and Learn, presented by Codabears. My name is Bill Golis. Today's topic, Epicor 10 client configuration and personalizations. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to talk about are sign-on options. When the software comes out of the box and you install, you have the username defaults to the Windows logon. So whoever's logged onto the machine that you're running the client at, that username will populate into the Epicor username field automatically. But we can change this. First, we're going to navigate to Windows Explorer, to our local disk, and to the Epicor folder. Within here, we should see our client instance and then a client folder. Within the client folder, there is a config folder, which is where the file that holds these settings is stored as an XML. And I'll just show you that real quick. It's called the instance that you have .sysconfig. And you'll see here that there is lots of values. And if you look carefully here, does have the user ID, the password right there. We won't be editing this file directly because Epicor has seen fit to provide us with a tool to do so from the client folder called config editor. This is an executable. When we run that, it brings up a choice of what instance sysconfig file we want to edit. We're going to choose the one for the live instance. And you'll see here there's tabs for the application, for the user, deployment, help, and sort. We're concerned with the user here today. This is where you can make changes to the sign-on options and populate the password automatically, as well as set single sign-on. First thing is the login default username. There are 4 options here: last, list, windows, and none. The last is the last person, or the last account to log on. The list will maintain a list of the most recent accounts to log on and present them as a pull-down window. Windows will pull up the current account that's logged on to the local Windows machine, and none will leave both of the password and username fields blank on the login screen. There are some who advocate using none because it forces your users to remember their username. It isn't there for them every day. In addition, it doesn't leave any information for others who don't have access to the application to see logon names and record them. For what that's worth, we are going to talk about other options today of logging on without having to enter username and password each time. There's 2 ways to do this. One is to hard code the username and password here right into the screen in these first 2 fields on the user tab. Now you notice that this does store the password in clear text. So there is a little security issue here. If someone can access this machine and the local disk and look up that XML file, if this password is stored here, it will be visible. That said, and we will save this. And now if we go ahead and open the application, it should come up without having to enter in username and password, which it is. The next option for logging on that we're going to talk about is what's called single sign-on. And single sign-on is, in essence, it's a functionality that lets a user sign on to the application without having to enter their username or password, and it does not store the username and password within the XML file. It actually uses the username and the fact that they are logged onto Windows as authorization to get into the core application. To use single sign-on, you have to do a couple of things. All right, here we are at the user account screen. What we need to do to enable single sign-on is we need to have an account created with the same Epicor user ID as the Windows user ID. And fortunately, we happen to have one here. I've already created this. You also have to have the domain be populated and that the Epicor client machine is on. You have to check the box here, require single sign-on. Once those three things are done, the account is created with the domain and with the required single sign-on. We save that. And we'll close the application. And also, then from within the sysconfig file, which we have up here still, we need to have single sign-on here activated. And once we save that, now when we open up the Epicor instance, it should log in directly without having to put in a user and password, and we see that it does. So again, the steps for single sign-on are create a user account in Epicor with the same user ID as the login ID for Windows, fill in the domain, and change the single sign-on value to true in the config file, and also check the require single sign-on within the user account maintenance. That will force the users to do single sign-on. If you don't check the box in the security settings for the account within Epicor, the user will have the option to turn single sign-on on and off from the sysconfig file. Now we're going to talk about some form personalization here. Form personalizations can go on pretty much any form within Epicor, and but the user has to be set to allow personalization. And in fact, we will show you where that's located at as well. When you look on the user account maintenance under options, the second tool here is allow personalization. That needs to be selected for the individual account to be allowed to personalize. So we will save that, and we'll go into, let's say, the customer screen, and we'll look at personalizing that. Okay, around the customer screen here, the first thing we'll talk about is sheets being moved around, forms on the sheets on the form. So here's our customer sheet, our billing sheet, our contacts, attributes. Let's say that you wanted to have the ship to be, right next to your customer so it's accessible. Just grab it by holding down your left mouse button, slide down to the spot you want it at, and release it. And it should drop right in there, which it did not. We're going to go to a reset layouts to base, and this is how you reset. If anything happens that's inadvertent, or that you have a whole bunch of things that you change and they aren't the way you want them, and you're not sure how to get back to where you were, you can always select tools and reset layouts to base to return to the base setup. All right, here's our ship to. We're going to slide it down to there, and now it is our first tab here, and the customers are second. To retain your changes on sheet movement, you need to go to Tools and Save Layouts. So now, if we were to come back into this particular screen, Customer and Master here, it would have the ship to as our first sheet to view. A bit more about sheets before we show how the save works. If you want to float sheets, for instance, you want to see this billing sheet in addition to your ship to, grab onto your billing and pull it downward and release it. Okay, now we have a floating sheet down here, and we can resize that, and I'm going to put it right here for now. More importantly and more relevant, you can put this onto a second monitor. So you can set up your customer maintenance screen such that your full left monitor, a primary monitor, shows your ship to or your customer detail, and then your billing sheet or your ship to or whatever you like could occupy the entire right screen, or even you could have two floating sheets on your right screen with half screen each, so you can view all three of those sheets at once, make edits, and save the whole kit and caboodle at the same time. This is a very handy to customize to your personal workflow. So once you have your floating sheet where you want it, save layouts, and again, having this on a second screen would be a more common way to do it. And now that we save layouts, if we close out of our customer screen and go back into it, we should see the same layout displayed to us again. And sure enough, we do. Our Shift to sheet has been moved, and we have a floating sheet here that is ready to rock. So we can work on all this at once, and then we can save it all, and we can exit right out of there. And again, if you get to this point and you don't like it anymore, and you say, you know what, I want to go back to how it was out of the box, reset layouts to base, and it will resync everything to the original out of the box format for your sheet and screen layout. Next, we're going to talk more about personalization of the actual forms. To do a personalization, you select Tools and Personalization. That will bring up a Control Properties window, and you'll see how the screen went to a grid pattern here with like little dots that will alert you that you are in personalization mode. From within personalization mode, you can do a lot of things to these screens. You can even change text. For instance, if you select that button, you'll see here where it says Text Customer, which is what is displayed there. We could change that to say Client. And if you notice, it makes the change. Something like this, if everyone was called the client within your company, can also be done at a customization level, so everyone's screen shows the same thing. That's more common. But for instance, if you wanted to have notes or verbiage on the screen that pertains to your particular job for personalization, for instance, on a one-time ship to, you might want to say that you have to alert shipping, okay, and then you'll see that right in front of you. So when you have a one-time ship to, it reminds you to alert the shipping manager. And perhaps if there is other things that are important to you for a particular function and that you want to change the color, for instance, our territory here, let's go here and let's choose our font here, and we can choose our font color. And then when we save all of this, and by saying OK, if we bring up a client or a customer, and you'll see now that it shows our territory here in red. So if that's something that's always important to us, we'll see it jumping on the screen. We've changed our customer button to be a client button, and we now have the alert shipping manager note on our screen for a one-time ships, so we know to do that as well. All right, that's customizing a form on the screen. Next thing we're going to talk about here is going to be changing your grid layouts within your forms. And grid layouts are in many places within the Epicor application. In particular, they're on trackers. So let's bring up a customer tracker here. We'll use that for our example to show us how to make some changes to the grid. The grids are handy because they display a lot of information in a single place, and you can also do some pretty neat and powerful things with those, which we'll show you here shortly. And we're going to select a customer, so we have some data here. All right, we're going to go to our financials for starters, and we'll look at the invoices, and we'll go to all, and we will retrieve. Okay, so we have a lot of invoices here. Let's say that we wanted to group these. If we right click in the gray area up here with the labels, you can choose show group by, show summaries, or show filters. Let's do a group by first. And you see it says to drag the column header to group by. So if we want to group by the invoice, we grab the invoice and we move it up to here and release it. Then you'll see that each invoice number has one entry. Most of them have just the single item, but you'll see that a bunch of them have many items or a multiple. So here we have one invoice with 4 items in here, different payments, different entries for the same invoice. And this allows us to view all the ones with multiples and to expand those if we want. That's grouping on your grid. Let's go to payments here, and we'll retrieve. Okay, oh, and here, there's already some summaries, but I will get rid of these. Okay, I started from scratch. If we right click on the header labels and we choose show summaries, you'll notice that you see a summation symbol appear at all of the columns that are allowed to be summed. Let's click on the summation symbol, and it gives you the 5 things that you can do from sums. The average, the count, the maximum, and minimum, and the sum. Let's see, for the amounts here, let's do a sum, and we'll say okay. For the invoices here, let's do a count to show how many that we have a total invoices for this customer. For the amount, let's do an average. Now, if we look at the bottom of this grid, you're going to see we have a count. There's 47 invoices. The average amount is $6,196, and the total of all 47 of these is $291,000. So as you can see, you can set up the grid view to have a number of different powerful summation totals or groups depending on what you need to see in your work every day. And let's look at one more thing here. I will go to our billing here, or to our invoices again, I'm sorry. And let's right click up here and choose show filters. And now here we're able to filter and just see one thing here. Or you can do a custom where you choose everything except that one, etc. So you have all 3 options here: groups, summaries, and filters within your grids. Once you get it set up the way you like it, all you need to do is say save layouts, and then when we close out of the customer tracker there and go back in, it will have retained our sheet setups, forms, and also our grid views. Here's our summations. Here's the other sums, and we had the groups applied here as well. This allows you to continually change the form as you find new and better ways to do your job, and continually save that layout, improve your form all the time as you go. So that is personalization and client options on Epicor 10. There's one more thing I wanted to show about loading Epicor 10 is if you're using handhelds, how do you load up the proper screen on the client there? Well, it's like MES, whereas on the shortcut for MES it is dash MES. For handhelds, it's dash HH. When you configure that onto the handheld and you run it, it brings up the handheld screen, which is sized for handhelds. And if we log in there, you'll see that we have the small handheld screen with the items that are defaulted for handhelds: trackers, material handling, just shipping, and such. And let's say that when we look at trackers, so we'll select trackers, select the part tracker, and let's just show how this works. We will bring up a one that I think has some info in it, put a part number in, and we'll say refresh. And you see, here's your part number with your bin and what's on hand, ready for the handheld or tablet usage. So again, the way to configure the client to run the handheld screen is with -HH in the shortcut. Well, that's all I have for today. I thank you for attending.